Thank you for joining us. You're watching a career success video from Computer Coach. Computer Coach is a Tampa-based computer training center specializing in helping IT and business professionals add on the skills they need to reach their desired career goals. If you are job searching, in transition, or are looking for guidance, please feel free to reach out to us at www.computercoach.com. Now, let's get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I am really excited to have you here today for our guest speaker series. Before we get started, I want to encourage those of you who have joined to please put your LinkedIn in the chat box. I'm going to go ahead and do that for myself as well. Make sure that we're connecting with one another, networking. So my name is Danielle Ori. I'm the Director of Career Services at Computer Coach. Computer Coach is a Tampa, Florida-based training center where we offer a variety of tech boot camps, continuing education, and skills training for experienced IT professionals and business professionals, or those who are looking to break or pivot into technology. We also provide free career strategy sessions to explore a range of the training possibilities that we offer. If you're looking to upskill or transition, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll make sure I put that information in the chat. And then also, if you're job searching, in Tampa Bay, there are training grants that are available that could cover 100% of the cost of training, certification, and books. So we wouldn't want you to hesitate to reach out to us to see if you qualify. So I will also make sure that I put that information into the chat because we want to connect and make friends and see if we can help you with your training and career success journey. That's what this is all about today. So during the presentation, last little tidbit is use the Q&A feature, but you can also use the chat if it's more convenient. We will have time towards the end to answer questions. So without further ado, let's get started. We have an excellent career guest speaker today who'll be talking about interview mastery. So welcome, Alyssa. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared and everything so we can get started. Can everybody see that okay? Okay, cool. I think in this view, I'm in a conference room, so I'm not at my desk. I should be able to see the chat on my end. So feel free, like she said, to put any messages or questions in the chat, and we'll make sure to cover those towards the end of our meeting today. But thank you all for being here, and thank you so much to Computer Coach for having me. I'm really excited to be your guest speaker today. My name is Alyssa Nichols, and I am the Director of Selection with Northwestern Mutual in the St. Petersburg office. I'm a St. Pete native, so I'm really happy to be back in my hometown working here and recruiting professionals to a financial advising career. So because of that, you might be wondering, well, why the heck are you giving a presentation about interview mastery for IT professionals? Well, I actually got connected to Computer Coach when I was working at a cybersecurity firm in Clearwater, and I started a podcast recently. I was let go from that firm and ended up at Northwestern Mutual. And in my free time, I've just become a really big, passionate person around career development and helping people. So when I meet candidates in my selection process, really my hope is that I can have an abundance mentality and I can introduce them to people in the community, whether it's on the tech side, on the financial planning side, or elsewhere, to find the right career opportunity that is going to be a fit for them. So that's a little bit about my professional journey. Personally, I grew up here in Tampa Bay and I went to the University of South Florida, so go Bulls for any of you Bulls out there. I studied communications and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life out of college, like most people. And I actually wanted to be a wedding planner. And I did that for about 3 months after I graduated from college. And what I found was that was not the career for me. So a friend of mine from high school, we ran into each other at a volunteer event for our high school in St. Pete. And he introduced me to Northwestern Mutual. So I'm a bit of a boomerang hire. I started with Northwestern Mutual out of college in 2015 as a campus recruiter, running their internship program all the way through 2020. pivoted to the tech space and have now come back to Northwestern Mutual. It's a great company to work for, and I'm happy to share more about that offline. But today, I'm really excited to share some tips on how to master the interview process. Some of these tips are probably things you've heard before, but my hope is today that I kind of kick them up another notch and give you those skills to really master the interview process. So I was telling Danielle as we were getting started, I tend to be a very down-to-earth person. So brace yourself because the recruiter memes are coming. Winter is not coming. We're obviously in 100-degree heat here in Tampa Bay, but the recruiter memes are coming. So oftentimes I feel like when people ask me recently at networking events or in the community, Alyssa, how do you find the best talent? And me explaining all the ways I get introduced to great people, I feel like that Always Sunny meme, right? Where he looks insane, explaining how he meets people or the recruiting process. And then really on the corporate recruiting side of things, I love this meme because it talks about all the different viewpoints of my mom thinks I just post a help wanted sign and that people apply. And that's not the case, right? Really what I feel like we're actually doing as recruiters is looking for a needle in a haystack, especially in the tech space when it comes to IT professionals or the cybersecurity side of things, right? We can get super technical on all the different types of roles that we look for in the IT space. And a lot of the times, I feel like in this space particularly, we as recruiters are looking for that needle in a haystack for some of these roles. So why am I bringing that up? Why is it relevant? Because during the selection process, when that starts with your resume or your first interaction with a recruiter, you're having to communicate your unique value and why you're that needle in the haystack. So we're going to talk more about that. But of course, some more memes. Goes to apply for a job, a technical position, the career website is broken. We've all been there. Or how about when a developer updates their LinkedIn and you're swamped and just swarmed by a million recruiters that want to steal you away? Or you could say, a recruiter added me on LinkedIn, so I guess things are getting pretty serious for any of you Napoleon Dynamite fans out there. But really and truly, I feel like this meme kind of encompasses what I'm saying about the needle in the haystack. This is a recruiter's face or my face when I find that purple squirrel looking unicorn. And obviously in the tech space, we know the word unicorn very well for that billion-dollar valuation. When it comes to candidates, I feel like that's something we used to joke about a lot when I worked in the tech space, is finding that purple squirrel looking unicorn that fits that criteria that's really specific for what the hiring manager needs. So that's really what I'm hoping you guys get from our talk today, is really how you can communicate that value, how you can best share that you are that needle in the haystack. So this is where things hopefully here get a little more interactive, because I don't want to just be talking at you the whole time. So feel free to utilize the chat. We're going to back into this and we're going to start with resumes, because we can't get an interview if we don't have a solid resume, right? So always starting with why. I'm a big proponent of professional development in books, and there's a great book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. So starting with why, backing into the process, thinking about resumes. How many resumes or applications or LinkedIn profiles do you think a recruiter looks at on a daily basis? I'm looking for a number. If you can throw it in the chat. I see some people are doing a thumbs up. 100 to 200, says Ray. What else do we think? 600. Yeah. 300, 500. Yeah, it looks like 250. We're kind of all over the place. I would say, pretty much any of those answers could be correct, right? I think it depends on a couple things. The roles that are open, if the company is hiring or on a hiring freeze, the type of firm, right? So is this a firm that's primarily hiring IT sales professionals? Are they hiring cybersecurity professionals, right? So it could be a very broad number. I would say personally this week, because it's back to school, I'm seeing a downturn in applications because people are so busy getting the kids back in school and not thinking about career side of things. But I would say on a daily basis, I probably look at a couple hundred LinkedIn profiles, resumes, applications, a mixture of that, right? So I ask that question because if we're looking at a couple hundred resumes, applications, profiles each day, my second question is, how much time do you think a recruiter spends reviewing each one of those applications, profiles, resumes. What do we think? How much time do they spend? 20 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 seconds, 45 seconds, less than 10 seconds. Okay. Yeah, all right. We got some similar answers. You guys seem to be on the same wavelength. I love it. I would say personally, when I'm looking at each application for each individual, if I have 200 to go through, I'm probably going to spend 1 to 2 minutes per applicant, right? So not 20 minutes and definitely not less than 10 seconds because I can't read that fast, but it is a little generous, but I really want to make sure I am not just skimming for information. I want to read as much as I possibly can. And I'm going to talk about how you can craft your resume to make it easier to get through the ATS, the applicant tracking system that kind of filters things, and how to, really communicate your value to that recruiter. So what does this have to do with interviewing? It has everything to do with it, I believe, because again, you're not going to land that interview if you don't have that solid resume or application. So what I'm sharing here, I stole from the internet, of course. This is one of my favorite graphics to share. I talk about it on my podcast all the time. This is a resume heat map. And basically what they did was a study where, and let me get back to my screen here, sorry, where they tracked a recruiter's eyes when they were looking at a resume. And this is just a sample, right? There's no name, no phone number, anything like that. What they did was they tracked the recruiter's eyes and how long or how many times they read a line, the hotter or warmer or brighter or more red the color on the resume gets. So if it's white or blue, they spent minimal to no time looking at it. And if it's red or orange or a brighter color, they spent more time. So giving you that information, what are some things that you notice about this resume heat map? What are some things we notice? You can put them in the chat. Yes, highlighting, exactly. So highlighting the highlight reel of your career, right? Put the good stuff at the top. Yes, only really looking at the top or the middle. Absolutely. So a lot of the times people will naturally revert to putting things in chronological order, and that's absolutely fine when it comes to a resume. However, when it comes to your bullet points, to Danielle's point, you want to put like the sexiest information at the top of your bullet points, right? So this person had a perfect score on the GRE. Like, that's amazing. Absolutely put it on your resume. They were in the top 10% of their class. That really stood out to the recruiter. They had a really high GPA. They were on the dean's list in the top 15% of their class. And then when it comes to when they worked at Deloitte, on the first bullet point, they're communicating data, which communicates their value. They reduced overhead by 20% or $2 million. And like full stop right there. They really didn't even need to provide much more, right? It's great to have that context. But you can notice even down here, 40%, 70, 500, those numbers are brighter colors. The numbers tend to grab our attention as recruiters and they break up all the words and letters, right? So especially in the technical space, when you're working even in IT sales or customer service for tech support, technical support, it could be support technician, it could be a lot of things, right? There are ways that you can communicate your value through data and quantify it. I challenge all of you. Many people have said to me before, but Alyssa, I can't quantify this, what my bullet point is. I challenge all of you to think about how you can drill down even further, asking yourself questions about this bullet point, how you can quantify it, how you can put data around it, how you can put context to it. So hopefully that's a really good explanation on why this is so important, because it will get you in the door for that interview. And then when you're in the interview, you've already done your homework and you can refer to your resume or your inventory of accomplishments. And I'm going to talk about that. So when you're in the interview process and you get asked a question, you can refer to your resume or your inventory of accomplishments to spit data back at the recruiter. We don't want to just hear why your opinion is that you're a great hire or what other people think about you. We want data surrounding your past experience that really points to all signs saying you'd be a good hire. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm going to keep going here. This is my resume. I censored my personal information. You can see what part of town I live in, and you can see my LinkedIn, but not my phone number or my email. You can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, let me know who you are. But this is an example of what my resume looks like. And this is the resume I used to get the role that I'm in now. I was working part-time for Northwestern Mutual as a strategy consultant, and I talked about the value that I brought to them on a part-time basis. I sourced over 450 candidates a week and sent over 250 messages weekly by utilizing LinkedIn. My second bullet point, not as data driven, but I had only worked there for about a month and didn't have a lot of data to work on. So I provided as much as I could. Same thing for the points down here. I talk about the number of partnerships and how I increased applications 64%. So as much as possible, providing those data points. Another great thing that you guys can do is hyperlink it out to web pages or organizations you're a part of, right? Any kind of data point that you can hyperlink, I think is great. And then I've actually hyperlinked my awards and accomplishments. It's a Google Doc that is public, which I know is some of your worst nightmares, but it's a Google Doc that is public to anyone who has the link. They can click on it and they can see my entire accomplishment inventory if they want. I'm not shoving it down their throats. And basically it's from 2013 when I was doing my internships in college all the way through today. And it's a highlight reel of all the things I'm most proud of. It could be silly stuff from like my sorority in college, my internships in college, all the way through being a campus recruiter to being a consultant, right? So there are a lot of things I've accomplished in almost 10 years of working professionally. So it's a great way for me to update my resume based on that inventory, based on the role I'm going for. There might be other experience I'm swapping in and out. But this is just a quick summary of the awards and accomplishments that are relevant to the roles I was applying for. In the recruiting space, being a diversity professional, having my awards listed, those are all things that are great. And same thing for you all, highlighting your skills, different languages that you speak, whether it's spoken languages or software languages, certifications you've obtained. I see a lot of that Six Sigma, green belt, that kind of stuff, right? That's great to put on a resume. If you've attended a conference, if you've had a project or a presentation at a conference and it's been ranked, I just put that next to one of the presentations I gave at a conference that it was ranked in the top 4%. They may not know what the SOAS conference is, but they know that top 4% is good. For the thing I was applying for, it wasn't relevant, which is why it's towards the bottom. But usually you should put the sexy stuff at the top. And then I still have my education on my resume. I feel like that's relevant, especially since I was applying for local roles to Tampa Bay. I wanted to highlight my experience at USF. So hopefully this is just a good example of what you could put on your resume to help communicate your unique value. And if that's not helpful enough, definitely write this down or take a screenshot or a photo with your phone. These are some example bullet points of ways that you can quantify your value on your resume. Whether you exceed a goal, you maintain a satisfaction rating for a certain period of time. It could be that you successfully implemented X platform with X amount of users in an X timeline. So communicating your impact and your results versus just saying that the standard tasks that are obvious to a recruiter. Like I've never been in a technical support role, but I've worked as a customer service representative. And from what I've gained working for a tech firm, I see the similarities, right? And so knowing that you've maintained a satisfaction rating or a ticket close rate, that stuff is really impactful for recruiters to know. It could be that you increased internal user awareness by 45% within 6 months. That's a lot, right? Especially depending on the size of your firm. So the more that you can communicate these data points and communicate the value you bring to the organization, the more likely you are to get the interview, ace the interview, impress the recruiter. All right. Hopefully that is helpful. This is a great tool if you have not taken an assessment in a while and you're not sure what your strengths are or how to communicate some of your value. I'm personally biased and I wish I was sponsored by this platform, but it's 16personalities.com. You can give it a Google. This is a great free assessment of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator personality assessment. So for any of you that already do this, I'm an ENFJ or have done it. I'm an ENFJ. If you couldn't already tell. I'm an E, which is extrovert. And when you take the assessment, it tells you your strengths and weaknesses. It tells you your professional communication style. It tells you opportunities for improvement, careers to consider. And my personal favorite part, it tells you what celebrities or fictional characters you are like. So if you couldn't already tell, I am Daenerys Targaryen and also Oprah Winfrey, which makes a lot of sense because I host a podcast. So I don't have my own network on TV, but maybe someday, guys. I'm not going to rule it out. So definitely recommend that if you haven't already taken that assessment. It's great when you're in an interview and they ask you what your strengths are. You can say, oh, yeah, you need to know your celebrity match. It's great. You can say, oh, my strengths are like that of Oprah Winfrey. And you can explain a little bit about your personality. I think it's awesome. Shameless plug for my content here on my podcast. I was going to play a clip from this, but I'm not going to do it because I don't want to worry about sound and all that stuff and getting back on the screen. But I did an episode recently. It's kind of a goofy tongue-in-cheek episode where I say, get ready with me for an interview. And at that point, I was interviewing for positions, right? And working part-time and doing podcast part-time. So my 5 tips, I'm going to just run through a couple of them right now, and you can watch the video. I dive a lot deeper into it. Number 1 is prepare for the interview. So research the company, give it a quick Google on Glassdoor, on Indeed, on some of these employer ranking sites. It's impressive when you go to an interview and you tell the recruiter what drew you to the company or the position, what you saw online. It's good for us to know that you're doing your research, right? And you know what you're applying for. And also my favorite trick when you're researching is taking the job description, copying it and pasting it into a Word document. And then what I like to do is I go through that document and I write an example of something in my past that aligns with that duty. So if it says doing speaking events, I put a couple bullet points under that part of the job description and talk about my experience in the past and where I had success organizing or attending speaking events, right? So that's my trick, so that when I'm in the interview and the recruiter asks me a pointed question, I can go to that document. That's the other thing, guys. Interviews are open note tests. You can have notes with you. We don't frown upon that. We love, I say leaders take copious notes. So if you say, that's a great question, let me refer to I actually took a look at the job description and I wrote down a couple examples, and you read them to the recruiter. That's awesome. We don't care that you're looking at notes. That's great, right? Especially for a lot of us having a long professional history now, we can't remember every single detail. Look at your notes. My second tip is to hype yourself up, because even the most confident people get nervous going into an interview. And that's at every step, whether it's the phone screen or the final offer. Give yourself a pep talk in the mirror or find somebody to give you a pep talk. I have an interview playlist I'm going to share towards the end on Spotify that I listen to when I'm getting ready for the interview. I have my little rituals I do. I meditate, right? So find what works for you and just hype yourself up. Because if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't have the confidence that you're going to succeed in the interview, why would the recruiter have that confidence in you, right? So you got to believe in you so they believe in you. Number 3, take care of yourself. So, literally like the things mom and dad told you when you were a kid. Take care of yourself. Go to bed early. Go to bed on time. Have something, healthy and delicious to eat before your interview so your stomach's not growling. Make sure you're hydrating, right? Take care of yourself. It's ridiculously hot. We need to hydrate. We're basically houseplants with more complicated emotions. So drink your water. Number 4, I like to call this prepare for battle. So this again is my Game of Thrones side coming out, but prepare for battle. So what I mean by that is before going into battle, we wouldn't just like wake up and jump on the battlefield, right? We're going to, prep ourselves. We're going to talk ourselves up, hype ourselves up. We're going to, eat a nutritious meal, hydrate, but also we need to lay out our armor the night before. What are we going to wear to this interview? If it's a phone screen, obviously don't, concern yourself with that. But if it's a Zoom interview, if it's an in-person interview, what are you wearing? Make sure you have deodorant, toothpaste, all the things that you need to have, your personal hygiene be up to snuff, so that when we're out in Florida and we're sweating, then you're able to, still have a great first impression. So prepare for battle and storm the field and get that job. And then my last tip is to follow up and follow through. So I was just reflecting and thinking, most weeks I interview at least 8 people. Sometimes it's closer to 12, sometimes it's closer to 20. So when I'm doing these interviews, it's very rare that somebody actually replies to a follow-up email with, "Thank you so much for taking the time to consider me for this opportunity." It's really, really rare now that I get thank you cards in the mail. And you guys, you guys are adults. You know that when you check the mail at the end of the day, when you get home, it's usually a bill or a past due notice, or, somebody selling you something and you're like, this is the last thing I want at the end of the day. So getting that snail mail, a thank you card, even if it's, a quick 2-sentence, "Hey, thanks so much for considering me for the position. I really enjoyed meeting with you." That's really great. And James, you're saying in follow-up emails, I find some recruiters not returning emails or calls. We can absolutely talk more about that. And that obviously depends on the person's volume. But just know that regardless of who they are, they're a human being and they're going to appreciate a thank you message, whether they are moving you through the process or not. We're human beings, right? And we like to be thanked. We like to be appreciated. And so even if I have a candidate who I'm not going to move forward in the process, if they send me a thank you, I'm absolutely more likely to want to help them and connect them to other people. Not that I don't do that for everyone, but I think it's great when you show that appreciation. And I will say, I interviewed for a role back in 2020, and I got to the final interview and they told me they didn't select me, and they gave me some feedback. And they said, but one of the things we really appreciated, that even during COVID, you sent us snail mail. You sent us thank you cards at every step of the interview process, and nobody does that. And we really appreciated it. So I ran into that person about a year ago at USF Homecoming, and they still remembered that I sent them thank you cards. And they just took me to lunch like a couple months ago when I was unemployed, and they were like, "How can I help you?" Right? So showing that gratitude and bringing the humanity back to human resources, I think, is somewhat of a lost art. And also following through. If I send assessments and I say, as soon as you fill this out, I can review it and hopefully move you forward. I had somebody do it the same day. I moved her forward the same day, right? If you wait a week, the odds are you're going to fall off the radar because we have a lot of people in the pipeline. So you having that urgency, and yes, James, to James's point, recruiters should have that urgency as well to do that follow through. So those are my 5 tips. I gave you kind of the Cliff Notes version of the video. It's a short video. It's about 13 minutes. So go ahead and check it out on YouTube at some point. I'm going to plug that at the end. All right. I'm just checking. We're doing pretty good on time. Hopefully at this point, most of you have heard of the STAR technique. This is kind of where the mastery point comes in on how to master the interview process. When I interviewed with Amazon a million years ago, this was how they told me they preferred their interview process to go. They prepped me on how to do the STAR method. This is a really great way to communicate your value and your impact. And how you do that is with the A and the R. So your first and foremost tip is to prepare. I highly recommend a pen and paper and writing down the question, repeating it back to the recruiter saying, "Did I hear that correct?" And that kind of gives you a little stall time so you can get your wheels turning and start to think how you're going to answer that. You can have your accomplishment inventory next to you and grab a story from it. And keep it short and simple. The situation and task, the S&T, should be a really short part of your answer, and you should spend the most time on the A and the R, your action and your result. So situation is laying the groundwork and saying, here's what happened. The task is, here's what the challenge was. Here's the task that I had to perform to overcome or complete what was in front of me. The action and the result, describe the specific actions that you or your team took in order to complete the task. And then the result, right? So it looks like this situation is the garden is dead, and this person wants to bring the garden back to life. And so what they did was they watered the plants and they gave them sunlight. And the result was the entire garden not only came back, but more flowers grew in the garden, right? So if we're not talking about the action and especially the result, we're not telling the whole story. And so my favorite exercise to do with this is practicing with your favorite movie or TV show. And I'm a huge Star Wars and Marvel fan, but the plots for those are way too long and complicated to use for this exercise. I really tried. I picked like 3 different Star Wars movies and it was too convoluted. So I picked my favorite non-Star Wars, non-Marvel movie, and that is The Wizard of Oz. And so thinking about situation, task, action, result, basically taking the plot of the movie and plugging it into that answer formula. It's a really good way to practice that format of answering a question. So that's exactly what I did here. Your situation, task, action, and result. The situation was there was a tornado and somehow Dorothy landed in the land of Oz and she needs to get back home to Kansas. So her task was with Toto in tow. She meets the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, and they have to go meet the wizard in the Emerald City. So their wishes can be granted. They all have wants and wishes, right? And so the action that Dorothy takes is that she's the one who kills the Wicked Witch of the West with a bucket of water in order to get her broomstick and trade it to the wizard for her wish. But the result at the end of the day was the wizard couldn't help her. Spoiler alert. Hopefully now you've seen this movie's over 100 years old. Hopefully you've seen it. The result was Dorothy learns that she's got the power. She's had the power all along. She clicks her heels 3 times and she goes home. Right? So just think about it this way when you're answering the question. If I only told you that Dorothy lived in Kansas, there was a tornado and she landed in Oz and she needed to get to the Emerald City to meet the wizard to go home, and I told you nothing else, you would be like, what comes next? How does the story end, right? So think about it that way. You're only giving the first half of the movie and you need to give them the climax to the story and the resolution. So that's the action and the result. Hopefully my analogy, thank you. Hopefully my analogy is tracking with you guys. And I absolutely challenge you to take your favorite movie and do it this way because it makes it so much easier to understand and apply. So hopefully you use the STAR method. It's a really great tip. All right, so I'm just going to wrap up here with some other tips and tricks, especially in the technical field in IT. You will need to be honest about your knowledge. So if something is required for a role and it's something that you're working on and it may not be a certification that you finished yet, be honest about your knowledge or the lack thereof. Talk about the platforms that you use, hardware, software, terminology you do or don't know. In the financial planning field, I've met a lot of people who I'll say like, oh yeah, we sponsor you to get your CFP. And they're like, what is that? That's okay if you don't know what it is. I don't ever hold that against people, especially if it's a new industry. A CFP is a certified financial planner, and it's almost like getting your doctorate in financial planning. That's how highly regarded it is in our industry. And so emphasizing your ability and your willingness to learn can sometimes take you farther than just saying like, oh, I don't know that. But I'm really willing to learn and I'm willing to study for this outside of my working hours, or, I'm willing to pay for the certification up front if you'll reimburse me. Really just communicating your ability and willingness to learn could absolutely make or break a position for you. Don't undervalue your soft skills. So like we talked about with technical support, that customer service, that can be huge if you're transitioning industries or jumping up for a promotion. Don't undervalue those soft skills like relationship management and following through, being organized, right? We pretty much covered this one, but answer with data, especially in this field, everybody is very data driven, talking about results, and more results. So reverting to that accomplishment inventory, using the STAR method, really focusing on your results, and then getting referred. Typically, if you're applying online, and your resume is not the strongest, you're going to have to do 200 to 300 applications to get 1 or 2 offers. So the more that you can improve your resume, and I have connected, by the way, to a lot of career coaches who do resume reviews, and I'm happy to help, with tips and things like that, but you can sit down with them and they can professionally review it for you. So I can introduce you to folks that do that. But improving your resume, but also networking your way into getting a referral using apps like Glassdoor. There's things called fish bowls on Glassdoor where you can go in there and ask to be referred to Amazon or certain companies, and people in those chats are usually willing to help refer. Use LinkedIn, right? So you don't know if you don't ask for introductions. I do that all the time with my candidates. I tell them like, hey, it sounds like you're really more interested in a real estate position, and that's great. you can absolutely look at my network on LinkedIn. And if you want to be introduced to anybody, I'm more than happy to write a quick message, introduce you to people at the firm I used to work for, introduce you to realtors I know, whatever, right? So utilizing LinkedIn and other social media to really leverage your connections. All right, I promised I would show it. If you have a Spotify app, you can scan the little code here, and I promise you it's safe. To my interview hype playlist, my interview pre-ritual has and forevermore will be singing Hamilton's My Shot, sometimes a cappella, sometimes with the backing track. And that always boosts my confidence because I know all the words. It helps me dance my nervous energy out and just really psych myself up and get really excited to go kick down the door and crush the interview. Yes, and Can't Stop the Feeling is on there. Have, a really long list. Happy by Pharrell. There's some really good songs on there that really pump you up, and a lot of women empowerment songs, a lot of Beyonce, Taylor Swift, things like that. So absolutely use it, tweak it, add your own songs, get your own ritual going. Yes, we love Tay Tay. And my podcast is called Intern because it's all about helping each other intern. But I also talk a lot about the early career development space with internships because that's been the majority of my career. You can absolutely check it out. The best way to do that is connecting with me on LinkedIn. I put it in the chat and I can do that again really quick. That's my LinkedIn. Just please, if you can, send me a personalized message so I know how we were introduced because like I said, I get like 200 requests a day. And you can scan the QR code to do it on your phone if you don't want to do it on your laptop, however is better for you guys. And that, I think, is my last slide, and we can get into questions.
To learn more about our training programs, classes, and what sets us apart, please visit our website at www.computercoach.com.